Okay, and with that, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Abby. If anybody has any questions, feel free to use the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat board here, and we can go from there. So, Abby, it's all yours.
Sharing my screen. Can everybody see?
Yep.
All right. Great. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Like Jason said, yeah, there was a little shift around. And so I jumped in at the last minute. So, I haven't practiced this a ton. So here we go. Like it might be a little bumpy, but I think we'll get through it together. So I am Abby Claus, like Santa Claus. I am the director of Salesforce for Camping World. And today's topic is Agile is Fragile. Is yours broken? Before we get started, I like a little bit about me so you guys know where I'm coming from. So I started out as an accidental admin in 2011. I have worked in-house as a in-house. I love owning an org end to end, but I also love the variety of being a consultant. So here at Camping World, actually, it's kind of both. It's a little crazy, keeps my ADD happy, and but I also get to own the entire thing end to end, which is really great. I have actually held kind of every role under the Salesforce sun except being a developer. I took Rad Women Who Code so I could read it better, but I respect developers. I know when I need one, which is pretty often, but I don't actually hands-on code myself. Dreamforce speaker in 2019 on a DevOps topic of Salesforce DX. I'm a coach and mentor. I'm also a single mom, and I love me some karaoke. So, all right. So getting into Agile's mission is, build in short, fast iterations, incorporating feedback after each new cycle, adjusting the plan accordingly to newly understood needs so that throwaway effort is minimized and a time to market is maximized. So, it exists to maximize user value and minimize waste, like we said. It operates in short iterations like sprints instead of long development cycles. And feedback must shape what gets built next. The thing about it is Agile can easily become theater instead of strategy. Without real feedback, you're just doing waterfall in a costume. So fragile Agile equals busy teams, bloated backlogs, but no actual value delivered. So, Agile versus waterfall. So waterfall is long timelines, siloed stages, late surprises. What? We've already built this whole thing, and you mean now we need to make a change that like interrupts a lot of that? Agile is continuous learning, adapting as you go. Waterfall tries to eat the elephant in one bite, like let's just do this whole thing, and Agile gets to eat it one sprint at a time. Why did we move from waterfall? Speed to market mostly, really, because time is money. Business is ever changing. Requirements are ever changing. Long times between phases. So, shifting resource management, if we've got a big project and you have everybody on staff the entire time, for a few weeks while you're doing discovery, developers are just sitting around twiddling their thumbs. And once developers get going, if you're in a waterfall method and you're not taking in new requirements, the requirements people are kind of just sitting there twiddling their thumbs, right? So it helps us be more efficient with our resources in addition to delivering more efficiently. And again, it tries to eat the elephant in one bite. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And you could be missing critical features or timelines because again, business is ever changing, especially in this fast-paced market, and budget, right? With Agile, especially with you deliver MVP, you can be delivering and have some value out to market immediately, and say your budget gets cut. That happens. You could end the project and still have something to work with, right? It may not be ideal, it may not be perfect, but you have something better than waterfall is this big bloated project and it just doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't provide any value until the very end. So if your budget gets cut, which does happen, that is a way to kind of, insulate the development from that. How Agile's supposed to work. So it's a flexible plan, right? It's plan loosely, then build, then test, fail or succeed, learn. The biggest piece is learn and adjust, and then repeat. Success equals responding to feedback and improving in real time. Agile without this loop isn't agile, it's fragile. So learning is the key here. your basic agile steps, right? Build a prioritized backlog, sprint and deliver value, gather user feedback and defects, and then reprioritize based on real world input. I mean, we're doing this right now at Camping World. We have this big rollout. We did a rollout, we did an MVP, and we thought we were going to move on to the next phase, but we had so much user feedback. We were like, whoa, before we actually paused an additional rollout because we're like, this is what an MVP is for, a pilot, right? And so we got a lot of user feedback. We're making changes before we do the next rollout. So we're kind of not failing, we're learning on a smaller audience. Um, so yeah, you reprioritize again based on real world input. That's the biggest key is, developers, users actually can tell when developers and, develop or a system is developed without their input, right? And then your adoption suffers, your data suffers, everything suffers. So it's that real world input that is the key. An ideal state, there's a lot of different roles that can be played here. And if you look closely, Paul, this is Paul's slide, he actually highlighted in green the ones that he thinks are like the most necessary. But you could have a 90-person agile team and everybody would have something to do. But that's generally not, the real world, right? But an ideal team does include the business, obviously, a product owner, your developers, QA, your end users, some UX, definitely security. You're in, security, of course, analytics, and then support. How is this going to be maintained once it is rolled out? Real agile requires specialized collaboration to optimize for value, not just for velocity. So, you can put in the chat if you have, a role that you think is actually important that isn't highlighted here that, is definitely needed on a team. You could pop that in the chat. We can talk about it. Lean Agile's key players, right? So minimum viable team. So we have your business and your product owner, your developers, your BA and your PO, your developers, your QA, and your end users. And it still works if everyone stays feedback focused and aligned on the why. Are those perfect role players in a dedicated single POC, part-time, or worst yet, a committee, right? Don't like, yeah. Does a lean team like that include those perfect role players? Hopefully. But this can work, and this is the most common I've seen. Lean Agile is the most common I've seen, and I've seen it work and I've seen it not work. And it doesn't work when we're just focused on delivery without actual feedback. Then we have aver agile. So it's basically average agile, right? It's when agile becomes a checkbox, not a mindset. You sprint fast, but in the wrong direction, and no one notices until it's too late. And it averages out to teams focused on story points and defects, but not outcomes. Yes, we delivered that story. Yes, we delivered 60 points in this sprint. But what does that translate to actual business value for the users? If it's not functional, if it's buggy, if it's, it doesn't work in the way they need to, sure, you delivered quantity, but did you deliver quality? So feature factor mentality is motion without meaning, right? So in plain terms, it's an agile in name only, just enough process to call it agile, but not enough to deliver actual value. So the teams follow the motions, they have sprints, they have stand-ups, they have backlogs, but they don't ask why they're building what they're building. That is the most important thing every single person on the team needs to ask themselves daily. Why are we building what we're building? And they don't gather or act on feedback. It's like, well, we were told this is what we're building, so we're shipping it. And is it working? I don't know. It's not my job. And they don't measure success beyond the task completion. So again, success isn't, hey, we delivered 60 story points. It is, hey, we were able to increase, user production by 60%. We were able to, reduce manual reporting, manual steps. We were able to save X amount of hours a day, but per user. And then you can quantify those metrics by, the hours saved per user by how much they make. It sounds like maybe you saved a user 4 minutes a day, but if there's 50 users at 4 minutes a day and they make $50 an hour, that can quickly get up to $250,000, right there in a process safe. So, that math really adds up a lot quicker than you would think when you're like, oh, sure, it saved you 4 minutes. But how many users did you save 4 minutes? Over a year, you annualize that by their salary. Like that's how you bring the value back to your software delivery.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I think the Aver Agile that you described is kind of like, you know, the contractor mentality of you told me to do X, I'm only going to do X. I don't care why. This is what I was told to do.
yep.
And that's easier to quantify because you told me to do X, I completed all of X.
Mhm.
What you described is a lot harder, I think. And I think that's where the challenge is really, you know, um, how do we push back or how do we train or learn how to write, user stories that have that mentality first?
Spirit of what we're trying to
Yeah.
accomplish, not just the logical step by step of what we're trying to accomplish. Exactly. And this, where this goes wrong is product owners just shovel tickets into Jira, just pushing stuff in. The developers just clear the tickets from the board. QA test it. Sure, it works as designed. Then they move on. But no one asks, did the user succeed? Did this actually improve anything? And so why that's a problem is it looks agile on paper, but functions like bureaucratic waterfall. It delivers features, not outcomes. It wastes development effort because it's all motion, no meaning. And it's easily exploited by vendors or consultants, to your point, milking the backlog. Having done consulting, it's like, oh, we've got a full backlog. There's tons and tons of stuff to do, but is it meaningful? And they don't know because they don't know the business, right? So it's easily exploited, to your point, Jason.
Yeah.
Then it can get even worse. It can get to agile. So the next step down from averagile, it's when agile it just misses the mark, and it doesn't just miss the mark, sorry, it actively works against the core principles. So in short, it's agile that's broken, dysfunctional, and often causes active harm to teams, products, and users. So what makes agile? No feedback loops, like we talked about in the beginning. No feedback loops. They just build, ship, repeat blindly. Teams ship just for the sake of shipping. Again, just to check that box. If we delivered 60 story points, great. That sounds like a lot, but like, what did you actually get for that, right? The feedback loop is gone. So done just means tasks are completed, not user goals met. Tasks are prioritized by ego or noise, not impact. So the as a user I want is gone and it's just replaced with like what works. And sprint goals are just get it done, not make sure it actually works for the users. This is one of my biggest things is developers don't understand why. They just churn tickets. And when I said I'm a coach, I coach people in the Salesforce space. And I'm like, if you're just delivering on a ticket and you don't know why you're doing what you're doing or how what you're doing fits into the bigger piece, you're just an order taker. Anybody can come and do your job, right? And they'll find a cheaper resource to do it eventually. So how you kind of insulate yourself from being replaced by a cheaper resource is that you know why you're doing it, what you're doing. You ask questions of why you're doing it. Like, hey, I understand this is the goal. This is how, we've lined out to achieve that. But knowing what I know, wouldn't this way be better? Bring that to grooming. Bring those have those conversations. Ask questions. Don't just take a ticket and deliver. That is, don't just churn tickets. Don't be an order taker. Also in Badgel, user feedback is ignored or completely absent. Like if you're not getting like what do the users think about what we just shipped? If nobody can answer that, hallmark of Badgel, right? And so you can ask that in your retros and like, what's the user feedback on what we shipped last sprint? Like that's a great, one of my developers asked me like, you're really thinking. I like that. That's great to know. You should know. Also, we as humans feel more fulfilled in our roles when we can see the impact of our contributions. So if you're an agile team leader, letting your team know what the impact of the development they just delivered was, hey guys, user feedback is great about this. You were hearing great things. Actually, there's might be a little tweak. Like giving them that information actually helps your team stay engaged. Um, and then another feature of Bagel is bug count and outages drive decisions, not user success. So you lose that innovation, right? If you ship something, you're like, I think it's going to work. It's passing everything. And I think this is what's going to be best for the user, but you're scared of bugs. Like you have to balance that, right? Like we're all humans. We all understand buggy systems from time to time. And taking a risk, is how we get better. So I'm not saying ship buggy things, do your best to prevent bugs, but don't hold back from innovation just because you're scared of bug count, right? If it's going to drive user success, that's the more important feature anyway. And you'll be surprised at how many companies are actually very tolerant of bugs if you're failing forward is what we call it, right? If you're failing forward, you're like, okay, it didn't work exactly how we meant it to, but this was the intent, and that now we can fail in that direction instead of holding back and slowing things down just to play it safe. Does that make sense? Um, Agile is often managed by people who weaponize Agile terms without understanding the intent and the framework. That happens quite a lot. Yeah, I know Agile, I know the sprints, I know the ceremonies, I know the terms, and they can speak it, but they don't live it, they don't mean it, they don't understand it, they don't embody it, right? So signs are in Agile territory. Could be stakeholder dumps last minute. I want features into your sprints. Well, we have to have this. We have to have this checkbox and do it now. Engineers are reduced to code monkeys without not collaborators, right? You're just sitting at a keyboard typing away and just do your code instead of, hey, this is my vision. This is the vision of the user. How can I leverage your genius to bring that to life? Like that's what a real product owner or team leadership should be doing is every single person brings a unique genius to the team. And if you're just, here's a story, go deliver it, bring it back without any engagement there and like any vision, like I think you're missing a real opportunity, to leverage the genius of everyone around you. Success means sprint burn down charts hit 0, even if the user experience sucks. If your, team or leadership is focused like, well, your sprint burn down. Like if you're more focused on that than the actual value you're providing your users, like that should be a sign of like, hold on, something's not quite right here. Yes, we want sprint burn downs to trend in the general direction because we want to finish work at the end of a sprint. Yes. At the same time, if you're like more focused on the line than the outcome, like that's a red flag. And it's even dangerous, right? Why? Because it breeds resentment, burnout, and disillusionment, right? If I'm just an order taker, I don't see the impact of my contribution. I don't understand like the user's perspective. I don't really know why I'm doing what I'm doing. Like I'm going to get burnout easier. I'm going to start to resent this project, and then I'm not going to perform at my best, right? And again, like I said, it kills innovation because there's no room to learn or adapt. It definitely wastes money and time and talent on the crap nobody needed. So in a summary, so Bagel is agile, stripped of its soul, with its speed without direction, output without value, and process without purpose. So we talked about this, Agile's secret value. Any feature requests creates billable work. We talked about this with consulting, right? And more code, more bugs, more billable hours. And without vision or accountability, Agile becomes a treadmill, not a strategy. I think we've all been caught on that treadmill from time to time. But if there's no feedback, it's not agile. It's just waterfall with more steps. You're doing waterfall 2.0 because feedback is what makes agile adaptive. So how can the bare minimal teams fix this, right? Even with limited roles, value delivery is possible if the number one thing I will always tell people, builders understand why. I always tell people, if you don't understand why you're building what you're building, you need to ask those questions. Be like, what is the overall intent of this feature? Because I've led some brilliant developers in my career, and I noticed like when I just like this is what they want, and I didn't tell them the backstory, I would get so much less innovation. Not because they were necessarily burnt out, because they just didn't get to bring their full genius to the table, right? And so when I told them, okay, this is what I'm thinking with my limited knowledge of the solution. However, this is what I know of the problem. This is where I know we're trying to go. Help me fill those gaps. And then my developers could really bring their, oh, and they would bring me things that I'm like, I could have never thought of that. Like that's amazing. So understand why you're building what you're building, because maybe you can bring that extra something that nobody else had thought of, but you wouldn't know to bring it unless you know why you're bringing it, why you're building what you're building. So, and then also that success is defined by user outcomes, not ticket completion. Again, builder needs to understand why. So the developers need context to build the right thing, not just build a thing. And understanding the why shapes better systems and smarter decisions. Step two. So this is another key thing that I have my teams do as well, is track how users interact with what you build. Okay, you built a feature, but how are you going to track it's actually being used or not? So what I have had my team start doing is we need some way to log every single time this feature is used. And then we go and do an audit, because my job as a director is to protect my team and to boast about my team. And so if we're building a bunch of stuff, sure, we've delivered this many points and this many, the agile metrics, but to the business, the users and their leadership, they don't really care. Like they care, but they don't care. They care about, hey, we delivered this button that took 3 steps and combined it into one, and we can show you how many people are actually using this. And then you again, how many people are using it, how much time was saved over a year at their dollar per hour. Now Salesforce isn't just a cost center. It's a help, it assists revenue generation, and that's where you always want to be. On any, especially it's you want to be as close to revenue as possible. So if you aren't as close to revenue as you can be, you can bring yourself closer to revenue by quantifying your metrics. How often are your users using this feature? And then if they're not, then you can get in front of that proactively and say, hey, we noticed this feature wasn't being used correctly, so that obviously didn't deliver the outcome we were expecting. So how can we then go and deliver the outcome we were expecting? And you open more conversations, you bring more innovation to the table. But logging how often users, use a feature is going to be, I wish Salesforce would figure out a way to build this in natively, but that'll be another 10 years. But you can do that, as part of everything you build. How are we going to track that this is being used or not? Be that voice in the room. Because, okay, we've got this feature, we've got this story, this is the acceptance criteria, but no one's really thinking yet until it rolls out and people aren't using it. How do we define success of this? Is it people are using it? Is it that, X people, how many people are using it? Anybody's using it? Like being able to quantify that is going to, I mean, that'll take you to the next phase of your career. If you can bring those types of questions to every conversation, like that'll really elevate you in your career. And then review that. Use those logs to identify user pain points, drop-offs, inefficiencies. So if there's a whole process, okay, they did process one, they did step one, step two, step three, but there were, we've got 100% at step one, but we've got 20% at step four. Let's now open up a UX conversation of why aren't we leveraging, the full process, right? It'll help identify inefficiencies. So get data, not guesses, to drive your sprint planning. Because, okay, we thought we were going to deliver this other stuff, but something that we thought was going to be a key feature is falling flat. Let's open that back up. The users aren't giving us direct feedback, but we're gathering still user feedback because we built in a feature capture, and so now we can analyze that and we can become a self-generating, like outcome generating machine, not just waiting for the business to tell us what they need, right? We can start to gather insights on that. And that's, again, what leadership is really actually looking for. It's like, not just can you just deliver what we ask for, but can you help us grow as a business? And so every single person that can ask that question of, is this valuable? How is this valuable? How's it being used? What's the end goal here? Like every single person that can bring those questions makes the entire team better. And then, yeah, grade your project success on quantifiable user metrics instead of bugs, right? Because if bugs are the only thing, or outages are only the only thing you're being measured on, that's what you're going to stay away from, right? But if you're like, yes, we had some bugs, but we delivered this feature that increased business, increased productivity, increased user satisfaction, that is actually meatier and more valuable to the business than, okay, we stayed away from 10 bugs. Um, so stop grading on bugs and outages, start grading on how well the user accomplished their goal. Because in a business, we're all trying to achieve the same thing, which is ultimately the business outcome, right? If we're just developing software for the sake of developing software, like what's the point, right? Our job as software developers is to facilitate the end users bringing the business goals to life. So tracking metrics like completion time, fall off rate, user adoption, like bringing those metrics to leadership will also, say layoffs are going on, can help insulate your team from layoffs of like, no, like not only did we not produce bugs, look at the value this team as it is has provided. That's my job as a director, is what I see as my job. But if you don't have somebody like that, just anybody can bring this. You can be like, no, if you cut our team, these metrics, which directly tie to revenue, are also then cut. So then you can, infer that business outcomes will also be cut, right? So you want to make yourself as insulated from layoffs as possible, especially in this economy, right? So that's a way to really, I don't say foolproof because it's not, but you insulate as best you can. Um, by showing not just, hey, we delivered this many sprint points or, story points or this many, few bugs. We were, 5 bugs less than last time. Okay, great. That's awesome. But it's also kind of assumed. But if you're able to tie back to business value and user feedback, user feature tracking, like that's the key. That's the gold.
Yeah, this is really a way to talk to the business in a way that the business understands, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Because the business doesn't speak our language. They don't speak story points. They don't speak velocity. They don't speak burn down charts. They don't care. They're like, hey, I've got a bunch of, we've got to process hundreds of records a day and we've got to do 5 clicks. Can you get it down to one? And that doesn't sound like a lot when you're a developer. You're like, oh, just click one more. No, like that. If they're doing hundreds of processes, records a day, again, 1 click, 2 clicks, 3 clicks, that can save seconds per person, per head count, per department, per hour, per year. Like that snowballs upward. And next thing you know, you're like, we saved the business $1 million by saving each person 30 seconds a day. Like that's a real thing. That's a real metric that, I've pulled in the past. You're like, oh, 30 seconds, big whoop. No. Oh, like you're doubling their productivity, right? If now I can do 2 things in a minute versus 1 thing in a minute, like I'm now doubling my productivity. And that's a metric that makes sense to the business. So net required increase in effort. So your builder to-do list, right? Best practices. So build fast, yes. Update your documentation. Obviously follow your security guidelines, your DevOps processes. Please code your comment your code. Please be everybody's friend and comment your code. Even non-coders, please comment your code. You follow all your best practices, of course. You follow your roadmap. That's all typical. But what we're adding here without a net increase in effort is understanding why you're building something. Because also, like, don't you always like to know why you're doing what you're doing? If you're just clicking buttons and doing things, you don't understand why you're doing what you're doing. You have no, connection to that process. You have no vested interest in that process. And so you can understand why you're doing what you're doing. Like, you'll also be more fulfilled at work. And then add patterns to track how you're delivering to the why and build with user outcomes in mind. Bonus, if the builders care about user success, what do? They reach for tools that increase it, like UX testing, adoption metrics, A/B testing, feedback loops. caring about success changes how teams build and collaborate, because now we're all problem solving together, right? We've got this is an issue, and we all get to use our brains to solve that problem instead of just breaking out into silos and delivering our little piece of it, putting it back and handing it off, and I don't know where it goes after that. Like, and we're all more connected, we're all more innovative, we're all more excited, we're all more high performing at the same time. So yeah, there we go. It's a small change, but a huge return, right? This is a band-aid that bridges a lot of resources constrained organizations. It's adding a fairly obvious best practice to an already long list of best practices we already know. We saw the gray and the green. And it might actually make up for the extra effort of getting to be proud of what you improved. Exactly, like you're more invested instead of just ashamed of what you broke. So it's not about adding work. It's about adding meaning. The ROI on user success beats the cost of preventable failure every single time. Pride replaces burnout when devs build things that actually work and that they get to understand that they're working, how they can improve, right? I come to my teams with, I think we're all adults here and we want to do the best we can every day, right? And when you're more invested in why you're doing what you're doing, you're going to show up better. You're going to, again, like it actually replaces burnout because it pours back into the cup that we're pouring from, right? When we're pouring our cup out, but we can see why we're doing it and the impact of it, and it's making a positive change that fills our cup back up. So it's a burnout preventer. It hedges against burnout. And then you can, like, this is an idea. You can provide a sample report or dashboard that demonstrates the process flow. So page one opens, clicked X, continued clicked X%. Like this is your story you're building of your process and your metrics attached, right? So this is just a sample that Paul created that can, a sample dashboard. If you've got metrics at every stage, you can create a dashboard that reflects those metrics at every stage. And now you can, on no uncertain terms, black and white or red and green and yellow, and however you want to color code your dashboard, you can make it be like, look, we've got 100% here, but we've got 30% here, and it looks like it's falling off right here. Then you're adding more value, and not just be like, well, we delivered story points, right? So, and then we can use those reports to inform priorities and not just make assumptions. Well, we think we should do this next, but this data is telling us that something's broken, and we have data backed of we need to go in and we need to fix it for the users. So I created a little visual of what Agile is like driving with a GPS and recalculating as you go. Agile is driving with printed directions from MapQuest in 2002. It'll get you there, but it's not the most, UX friendly thing, right? But Bagel is like driving blindfolded because there's someone in the back seat yelling, faster, faster. So you're going to go off the road pretty quick, right? So I always like a visual. So with that, any questions? Do we have any questions come in?
I didn't see anything question-wise in the chat. It was mostly just, just some, chat along with the, some comments along with the presentation. So, let's see. No, don't apologize, Rodrigo. That's fine. So anybody have any questions, or have you experienced bad agile or ever agile in your, current or former places? We won't tell your boss, trust me. You know.
Safe space. Anybody have a story they want to share? Nobody's ever experienced bad agile? Bagel? Oh yeah, okay.
I can tell you one. It was a couple. It was when I first started even understanding what the heck agile was. I was working for a company. I won't say their name, but you probably use their phone service. And the the I had switched to another team, and that team was very much in the agile space. And I was like, "What the heck is this thing that talking about. And I had experienced the, water. I'd come from waterfall where literally I spent like a month doing nothing and then spent 2 weeks doing a month's worth of work, because they finally got it to me, kind of thing. So at first, Agile seemed interesting, seemed great. It was like, okay, we're building something, but we don't really know what we're building yet, so we're just kind of starting it. And it where I really started seeing some of those issues was just like you said, somebody going, "Why aren't you getting this done quicker?" I think it should be doing this without any rationale or any kind of, thought process to it. It was basically just, the boss came in and said, "You got to have this done faster." And you should make it look like this other project. Literally, there was literally had a meeting where there were two teams. I was on this other team that was newer, and he said, "Just make it look like the other team. Why can't you just make it work like the other team?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." Yeah. So,
Yeah, business leaders can be like that. And all of this to say, like you said earlier, that when you're in Agile, like moving to true Agile isn't the easiest thing, right? It takes
yeah,
a little bit of vulnerability to be like, hey, I know we're like churning here, but kind of Zach Morris time out for a minute. Like
yeah,
we, do we know why we're building and stopping that, and asking the question. But it's an act of bravery and it's an act of integrity, in my opinion, to, because we as developers and software builders owe it to the end user to make their experience the best we can, because we can,
yeah,
right? They can't change the system, but we can. And I think, if we take that onus on us of like it's our responsibility to make their lives easier, then I think that's, it's going to make everything better. Because if the end users' lives are easier, they get to do things faster or more or better. We trust our data more. We make better decisions. We make more money. We get to keep our jobs and maybe get bonuses. Great, right? Like there's a linear path
yeah,
here. And so, we all have a vested interest. It may not feel like we do, but we do. We all have a vested interest in our end users' experience being the best that it can be.
yeah. There was one question that came in. I'm up to apply this, but it's only me in the Salesforce team over here. Any advice on how to do this when it's just me?
Well, yes, I have a whole other talk that's called Solo Admin. You shouldn't be. So couple of things. If you are the only person building Salesforce and you have a lot of users, I mean, just validation, you shouldn't be. So you're not necessarily working in Agile because Agile is meant for teams. And so you are wearing all the hats, right? When I coach solo admins who come to me and I can just see the burnout on their face, because I've been one. I'm working 80 hours a week trying to make this work. Um, this is might be controversial, but I always tell them like you have to let the business feel the pain. You can only do what you can do in your 40 hours or however many hours over that, if any, you're willing to give. Um, if any, you're willing to give. Like you do not have to work 80 hours a week. Like that's, it becomes your choice. And how you do that is you have to you have to document everything that you're doing. It sounds like, oh, it's going to slow me down. Yeah, for a minute. But you will never get help if you cannot quantify what you're actually doing, because the business is like, well, you're handling it, it's fine, right? And then meanwhile you're suffering and working 80 hours a week and not seeing your family and like not having a personal life and you're exhausted all the time, like
Yep.
exactly. So you have to quantify what you're doing, you have to log everything, and then when new things come in you're like, I can get to this, however, where would you like in this long list, where would you like it to sit, what is it more important than, because then it's not on you, it's on them. And if they don't get something else, it's because they made a choice. And so but you have to let the business feel the pain. You have to stop absorbing that pain, or else you will continue to absorb the pain because they're not just going to be like, oh, sure, let me spend another, 30 to 100K depending on the role, for no reason when you can do it all by yourself. Why would I duplicate that? So you have to show them, you have to quantify it, and you have to let them feel it of like these initiatives are not going to get done because this is the work of two people. Also, the first question your boss is going to ask if you ask for help, what are they going to do? You've already got a list. You're like, here, this is everything they're going to do. It'll take me 6 months to do this. Or if you get another person, it'll take 3 to 4 or 2 to 3 or whatever, right? Depending on skill sets. So then it becomes a business decision, not a personal failing. So it does feel like, oh, I'm not going to get anything done. I don't have time to log it. Well, if you don't have time to log it, they're not going to have budget or time to get you help. It just is what it is. But Salesforce is like buying a plane. I did a podcast episode on this, if you know the CRM success show. But Salesforce is like buying a plane. You are buying a private plane. When you buy a private plane, you also have to staff a captain. You have to staff mechanics. You have flight attendants. You do not want your mechanic flying the plane. Like you just don't, right? Bad things happen when your mechanic flies the plane. They don't know how to fly the plane. They know how to fix the plane. So you need the correct roles to get things done. So you need to log, and when you log what you're being asked to do, then that will also inform the type of resource you need. You think you might need another admin, but maybe you don't. Maybe you need a project manager. Maybe you need a developer. Maybe you need to contract a developer and hire a project manager. You don't know without defining the work. And if the work is this big ambiguous, like I'm just so busy all the time, but nobody can drill, you can't double click in on that, then you're tying your own hands because you're not giving leadership anything to work with, because leadership generally is probably going to have to go above them and justify this cost, because it is a cost. But if that cost can be justified with business case and supporting evidence, you're making their job easier, right? If somebody comes to me and like, I need this, I'm like, okay, I need to help me understand why you need this. It's not an indictment. It's not a personal failing. It is, if you're a sole admin, you should not be, because they bought a plane and they're expecting their flight attendant to fly it, maintain it, and park it, and air traffic control it, and all of the other roles that go in, right? I mean, we see what happens when there's cuts to, FAA. So like we need to make sure that people are in the right places to do the right job. And they can't do that without knowing what the job is, with the outlining the work to be done. So every week, at least block off some time, log what you're being asked to do, what the priority you think is, then take that to the decision maker and say, this is what I think we should do. And then they will correct it, because people will always, you're not going to get an answer of like, hey, what do I do? Because people don't want to think for you, but they will correct you if you're wrong, and they love it. So even if you're not sure, be like, this is my best guess. And then they're like, actually, we want to swap these things, remove these things. And then they can start to see, oh, we do have a lot. And there's your business case for getting help, so you're not working 80 hours a week by yourself. That was my little mini TED talk for free. My daughter does that too. Yeah, so that's my take on that.
Okay, anything else? Anybody else
Yeah.
have any questions or feedback?
All right. Well, hopefully the QR code's working, but I should go to my LinkedIn. Feel free to connect. And I don't know what Dreamins are down by you guys, but maybe I'll see y'all at a Dreamin sometime, or Dreamforce or something fun. But feel free to connect and, shoot me over any questions. I do have the podcast that I've been on talking about these things, because I go into like how to, do like how to actually do more of these things. I have those linked on my LinkedIn, so you can listen to those if that's helpful. I hope it is. But yeah, if you have any questions, just let me know.
Great. Abby, thank you so much for pinch
Yeah.
hitting here. I really appreciate this. This was great. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't sure what I was going to get, and you just knocked it out of the park. Thank you
Oh,
again so much. This was such a great presentation. You did such a great job. I thank you from the
thank
bottom of my heart. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome anytime. You give me a Salesforce topic, I've got an opinion. So
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well,
thank you guys.
everybody have a good rest of your day. Thank you for attending, and talk to you soon, hopefully. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.